I'm a white person and my whiteness is constructed by other people. So here in the US, I am white. I experience every privilege that comes with that. But if I were in Europe and were raised there, I would be an ethnic minority because I'm descended from Sami indigenous reindeer herders. And there were actually numerous racist eugenic theories developed in Norway and Sweden at the turn of the century to explain why and how I and my Sami family are not white. But here in the US, I am just assumed to be white, right? And so how people see me and my identity depends on the context I'm in and how other people construct my identity, and not just how I construct it myself. And so I think part of the diversity of people is this combination of self-identifying who we are and how we identify, and how other people construct our identities for us. I've often felt very divided between my professional self and my personal self in spaces where conservation research and science occurs, or when conservation is discussed and planned. And this has to do with my identity and my upbringing. So while I work and have been educated at elite research institutions in the United States, I have an indigenous ethnic background that's very distant from these kinds of institutions. And my extended family are Sami nomadic reindeer herders who live north of the Arctic Circle in Sweden and Norway. And their livelihoods are directly threatened by climate change, as well as infrastructure development for vacation homes, energy plants, mines, petroleum terminals are all expanding rapidly in traditional herding grounds. And so with that, knowing that, you'd think that a lot of Sami interests would be in line with the goals of biodiversity conservation projects. As the Sami are stewards of pastoral tundra ecosystems, and are also threatened by climate change and development and things that we think of as traditional threats to biodiversity. However, the Sami, like so many other indigenous peoples and other communities, have experienced systematic oppression, forced assimilation, dispossession of land and livelihood, not just for development concerns I mentioned, but in the name of conservation. So for the Sami, any new conservation efforts are embedded in this history of dispossession. And I think this experience mirrors that of many other indigenous peoples and other people and communities who have been marginalized by imperialism or colonialism. And these are also, the same communities that may have a lot in common with conservation goals, or that conservationists work with or around. And so there's this potential for cooperation, but a huge, chasm of harm in the past that needs to be bridged. So my identity as someone with Sami ethnicity, it's a part of who I am and the worldview I carry. It informs the way that I approach science, the research questions that I ask, the process by which I conduct my research and conservation practice. And so just as conservation cannot be separated from an oppressive history for the Sami and other indigenous peoples, I can't separate my ethnic heritage from myself when I step into professional settings. And I'm acutely aware of times when conservation research projects or activities may be perpetuating colonial dynamics and past harms. And sometimes it's hard to find the space to bring this up and discuss this with other colleagues in the field. So that's a challenging aspect of my identity working conservation. But, you know, on the flip side, the cultural and historical worldview that I hold is an asset for conservation. And a lot of people have multifaceted and different perspectives like mine. And when space is made for us to share and bring our perspectives to the table, that will enable all of us to fully engage in this important work that we're doing and bring our whole selves to work and improve the act of conservation. And I'd also say that my identity, it draws me to this profession. Climate change is directly harming my family in a very real way. And so I shouldn't just be here in the conservation workforce to check a box for somebody's diversity quota, right? I'm here and I'm important to this field because for me, the need to address climate change right now, it's not theoretical, it's very personal, and it's a part of my heart. I heard someone talking about a case of, you know, sexual harassment and misconduct. And a white man in leadership said, you know, in response, this is why I don't want to bring female students out for any field work. You know, and this just really upset me so much because that's not the answer to this issue. You know, excluding all women from field work is not a fix for the problem. I think, you know, in that situation, if someone had responded immediately to that person and said, you know, if that's a joke, it's not funny. And if you're serious, that is a horrible thing to say and not the solution to this problem. I mean, that would have been amazing. I think I remember I overheard someone did say that, but it was a woman. And I really wish it had been a man who had said it. It would mean so much in that kind of a situation to have that kind of intervention. In an ideal world, people could bring their whole selves to work and identify how they wished without having to like leave parts of their identity behind coming to work. And, you know, ideally, what does conservation need to do to get there is to create space and welcoming space for everyone to feel like any and all identities are included in that space and are valued in that space. And I think because people have been historically marginalized from the field, a big first step, it has to be recognizing that some people have been marginalized in the past. And coming out with that truth builds trust and is a really important first step to recognize that, you know, we want to make progress and include more folks going forward. So I'm someone with multiple identities, as we all are, but a big one I hold is being white in North America and being treated as someone with white privilege in North America. And so I feel those of us who have that privilege have a responsibility to use it in order to help dismantle injustice and work towards equity. In other words, you know, the biggest changes are needed among those who hold power now to take responsibility and invest in changing themselves and their institutions. So, you know, I choose to leverage that privilege that I have as well as my multifaceted worldview, to make space for and lift up the voices of Indigenous scholars and scholars of color, to force conversations that recognize and address how certain communities are and have been marginalized from conservation biology. And we can make these spaces to question systems and structures that continue to reflect and privilege Western worldviews over all others. And just making space for these conversations are so important to help lead to actions and continued support needed to make a difference.